that would be specialized in leading training camps and fronts. Most of the 24 trainees that had been selected for the course were Saudis and Yemenis, underlying the fact that al-Qaeda was targeting Saudis and Yemenis for recruitment, not only to carry out international terrorist attacks, but to serve as mid and high-ranking leaders in the organization. The program included a 4-week basic course in small arms, followed by courses in explosives, topography, and tactics. The practical lessons were supplemented by religious and political lectures, and the lecture series, according to Harun, memoirs look something like this: Osama bin Laden, Issues of the Muslim Ummah; Abu Muhammad al-Masri, Palestine and World Politics; Fadil Harun, the East Africa Operation; and Abu Osama al-Libi, the Algerian Civil War. It is notable that Fadil Harun was selected to lecture on the East African Operation. As further described in Chapter 8, Harun was the only member of the terrorist cell that managed to flee East Africa after the attacks and join al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. His survival ensured, presumably, that the tactical lessons from this operation were transferred to the new generations of al-Qaeda cadre. Al-Qaeda's Cadre Course at Murad Beg was not open for members of other militant groups. However, other groups were welcome to attend the political lectures given at the camps. The Kurds, Tajiks, and Uzbeks were invited to attend as other groups like Abu al-Libi, leader of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, and Hassan Mashoum, the founder of the ETIM. The purpose, presumably, to spread bin Laden's political ideas to other groups in Afghanistan. Now, there were other Salafi militant groups such as Abu Sayyaf and Jama Islamiyah and the Egyptian Islamic Jihad and Boko Haram, but these groups were basically allied to al-Qaeda. But if you had groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba or the Jaish-e-Mohammed, these are groups that are based in Pakistan and had no affiliation because of religious indifferences with al-Qaeda. Now, they would get along because they share the same enemies, similar enemies, but because of ideological differences, these groups tended to basically not commiserate with one another, even though the Taliban and al-Qaeda would get along and basically live with amongst each other, but they had different religious precepts. The Taliban were led by Hanafi, and then the al-Qaeda was led by Wahhabi. We do not know what happened to the 24 recruits at Murad Beg, except for one Yemeni nicknamed Abu Osama al-Adani, who ended up in the U.S. detention facility at Guantanamo Bay. According to leaked U.S. intelligence information, al-Adani served at the Bagram front line at various periods after completing the course, and in December of 2001, he was commanding a group of Arabs at Tora Bora. If it is true, it means that the Yemeni was following a rather typical career path of al-Qaeda, starting with the basic course and advancing to become a mid-level operator commander. The booklet describing al-Qaeda's cadre program describes the career path in detail. Overall, the booklet states that the training camp played a big role, initially to appraise and categorize the brothers. The best candidates are selected for more advanced training. Then, trainees are supposed to spend a period of time in an operational program, which is true. Like the front, for example. Al-Qaeda liked to be in the front lines of war. First of all, it basically ensures that the person serving in the front lines is not afraid of dying. In other words, if they're going to send an operator on a martyrdom course, they don't want this guy basically abandoning ship in the middle of, this martyrdom operation. So that was one of the reasons why they wanted these people basically to face mortal danger, right? Oh, excuse me. So there was a lot of different tests regarding how one can enter Al-Qaeda in whatever skill set possible for them, or basically that could utilize their best to their advantage regarding their skill sets. To discover and to get to know the sides of his personality, confirm what was recorded about him during training. Afterwards, the trainee is instructed to take more advanced courses, which will complete the formal training. Then he will be assigned to the area of service, like the front line or guarding or other type of work, in order to reach his real potential. Then, after a certain period, he would be selected to join the Cadre Course. According to this program, the recruits would move back and forth between the training camps and the front line, which until spring of 2001 meant the front line north of Kabul. And after spring of 2001 also included positions in Takhir province in northern Afghanistan, where they were fighting members of the Northern Alliance and Uzbeks and Tajiks to basically take control of the country. Taliban needed the al-Qaeda services and took their weapons as well. The frontline service had several functions. During the trainee's first visit to the front line, he was expected to complete a set of courses in artillery and other heavy weapons. It was also a test for the trainee to see how he would endure the harsh battlefield conditions. When the trainee completed the Cadre Course, he would be sent to work in Al-Qaeda, which would mean either at the front line in administration or as an instructor in the training camp. Trainees who were sent to the front line at this stage would typically work as commander or sub-commander of small groups of fighters. Al-Qaeda's cadre development program was based on continuous evaluation, starting from the moment the recruits entered basic training. An internal Al-Qaeda document gives insight into some of Al-Qaeda's evaluation processes. In September of 2000, 24 recruits graduated from Al-Qaeda's advanced security course in Kabul, and in a report sent to Abu Hafsa Masri, aka Ahmed Abdul al-Aziz, who, by the way, is currently in Guantanamo Bay and being charged for the 9/11 attacks, the instructor in the course lists the candidates and their grades ranging from dependable to very good. And Table 5.3 provides a definition of the grades. They suggest that training were evaluated according to their leadership qualities as well as the level of their skills. In other words, Al-Qaeda's cadre program emphasized the development of military leaders similar to education within regular armies. Is this guy basically a soldier? Is he a commander? Is he a leader? The 4 top grades were awarded to trainees with good to excellent skills and who were either capable of leading a team or in need of time and experience with the men before being able to lead a team. Only 4 of the 24 graduates fell in those categories. And there's a list of the people that were here. And here we go. 10 fell in the category of team members. The rest fell into lower grades, suggesting they would be better off working in administration or proselytizing. Dawa, it's called. One of the top students in the class of September of 2000 and described as capable of leading a team was Adnan el-Shuknajuna. An interesting name because after 9/11, this guy came under intense investigation. He was a Saudi who grew up in Florida and started frequently training camps in Afghanistan in 1999. Sometime after 2001, he became involved with Al-Qaeda's external operations cell, and in 2010, he was placed on the FBI's list of most wanted terrorists with a $5 million reward on his head. By the way, Shuknajuna was staying at the Al-Hijj family in Sarasota, Florida, where it was said that members of the 9/11 team, especially the pilots for 9/11, were basically visitors. And Shuknajuna knew some of these people. These internal documents show that Al-Qaeda's system of education was comprehensive, rigid, and ambitious. Al-Qaeda did not simply educate operatives capable of planning and carrying out international terrorist attacks. The main goal was to educate military leaders for Al-Qaeda's organization that could take on a range of tasks, from leading units on a battlefield to building clandestine operations, underground networks in the interior, to providing military assistance to local insurgencies. In other words, they would actually go if you were not chosen to fight with international to fight against the kafir in, say, the United States. Well, maybe you could fight against the Indians, where the Taliban and members of the Taliban offshoots like Lashkar-e-Taiba would basically fight against the Indians in Kashmir and Lahore. Or you would serve at the front lines against the Northern Alliance for Battle of Afghanistan. Depends on where you want. I mean, in the early 1990s, you had Algeria, you had you had Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, you had Afghanistan. There was a lot going on. This provides at least a partial answer to a puzzle that plagued the Western intelligence community for years after 9/11. How could Al-Qaeda survive so long, in spite of the arrest and killing of so many of their mid and high-level operatives in Pakistan after 2001? The foundation was laid already in the early 1990s when Al-Qaeda started the first cadre course in the Khost province of Afghanistan. We do not know how many cadre courses Al-Qaeda held after 1996. Only one is documented in the primary sources, but most likely there were more. In any case, the existence of a cadre course and its reactivation in Afghanistan in late 1999 suggests that building a resilient organization was a core part of Al-Qaeda's strategy in this period. Now, remember, too, Al-Qaeda used to have a training manual for torture. Now, in one such instance, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was waterboarded 173 times, basically used to count on his hand how long the drowning would last. He would be used to it. And this was disseminated in the intelligence community, specifically the CIA. And you had psychologists within the SEER program, like Bruce Jessen and James Mitchell, who basically would come up ways with, psychological and physical torture, where Al-Qaeda wouldn't be prepared. Al-Qaeda's training activities in Afghanistan in 1996 to 2001 had strategic as well as idealistic purposes. This duality can be traced back to Al-Qaeda's charter from 1988, which divided Al-Qaeda's work into essentially and non-essential tasks. One of the core but non-essential tasks of Al-Qaeda was to provide support and guidance to other militant groups like Abu Sayyaf, Boko Haram, the Taliban, Jemaah Islamiyah, the Haqqani network, other groups that basically are fighting against Arab governments and, of course, the West. This explains why Al-Qaeda offered training and assistance to other military groups who came to Afghanistan. It may also explain why Al-Qaeda offered Hassan Mashoum, a Chinese Uyghur separatist leader, to audit one of Al-Qaeda's advanced courses on security. However, Al-Qaeda's training activities in Afghanistan also had a strategic purpose. The purpose was to educate cadre for Al-Qaeda's organization who would be qualified to take on a range of tasks in the future. Al-Qaeda's Cadre Course covered a wide variety of subjects, including political, Islamic, and administrative topics. During the course, the recruits were expected, inter Qa'ida, to memorize the 40 Hadith of al-Nawawi, to practice their handwriting, and to serve for extended periods at the Taliban's front line. The purpose was to create a pool of skilled, reliable, and battle-hardened personnel. The existence of the Cadre Course illustrates how Al-Qaeda by now had developed into a semi-professional military organization. It had a system for receiving new recruits. It had formal entry procedures. It had a rigid training program in which only the most dedicated and talented recruits were offered to enter Al-Qaeda. The recruits were graded according to their leadership abilities as well as the level of their skills. There were set job descriptions and standing operating procedures for camps and guest houses. This does not mean that Al-Qaeda was a regular army, but their activities described here suggest that they had ambitions that went far beyond international terrorism. Because when Al-Qaeda was first, when Al-Qaeda first came into existence, they were basically a bunch of Arabs that had experience in small arms fire that would basically train the Taliban in small arms fire or guerrilla tactics, guerrilla warfare tactics, or how to make bombs. That's what they were there for initially in Afghanistan, to help them fight against the Soviets and the communist regime under Nabila Rabinullah. So that's what they were there. They weren't an international terrorist threat in 1987 when they first created. That came much later, probably by 1996 when bin Laden returned to Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda's professionalism made it stand out from other military groups in Afghanistan. This helps explain how Al-Qaeda managed to get a privileged position with the Taliban regime, even as the Taliban sought to regulate the activities of foreign fighters in Afghanistan, which is the topic of the next chapter. And that's the end of this chapter. And I want to thank you very much for coming on and paying attention. This is probably one of the best books regarding the Arabs influence in Afghanistan during the late 80s, early 90s, and also Al-Qaeda in general. So, all right, guys, have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next video.